So, if anybody studied the cases of execution across Canada in the 1950s, or the period between the time the early 50s where executions were more prominent to the early 1960s where executions were basically eventually taken off the books in Canada, the Wilbert Coffin affair stands out because the machinations of this case is pretty bizarre. You have to bear with me. Everyone had a viewpoint of this. But when it comes down to it, people died, and Wilbert Coffin was accused and convicted of the crime. Now, Wilbert Coffin, born October 23rd in Gaspésie-le-Medlin, Quebec, which is near my hometown in North Shore, New Brunswick. He was a Canadian prospector who was convicted of murder and executed, and because of it. Now, Montreal Journal's editor, author, and politician Jacques Hébert later raised doubt as to Coffin's guilt, and in a book that was published in 1963 was called pretty well the Coffin Hoax. The book led to a royal commission which upheld the conviction, and the aspects of the case were this. On July 15, 1953, the remains of Eugene Lindsay were found in the Gaspé region of Quebec a month after his disappearance. The body had been torn apart by bears. On 23rd July 53, the bodies of Lindsay's 17-year-old son Richard and 20-year-old Frederick Claw were also found 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles away. The 3 men had last been seen going into the woods to hunt. Lindsay, unfortunately, had graduated from high school in Pennsylvania the day before the trip, so it was kind of a celebration outing for them. Coffin was accused of ambushing the 3 men and stealing more than $600 from them. Coffin denied committing the murders, but was found to have some belongings of the deceased that he came into possession of when he found the abandoned vehicle that belonged to them in the area that they went missing. Coffin, along with others in the area, were known to salvage abandoned property found in the local area and shoreline to make a meager income. Now, Coffin went through 7 reprieves after his conviction when he was denied clemency by the Quebec Court of Appeals, the Canadian Supreme Court, and Prime Minister Louis Saint-Laurent's cabinet. Finally, on 10th of February 1956, Coffin mounted the gallows. He was refused his final wish of marrying his longtime partner, Marion Pitre, who was also the mother of his 8-year-old son, James. Now, after his passing, Mohawk Indian Frederick Gilbert Thompson confessed to the crime in 1958, fingering his friend Johnny Green as the killer of Richard. He later recanted his confession, and Canadian authorities dismissed his story as not credible. There's no idea why he came forward. Now, the movie of the Coffin Affair was literally called The Coffin Affair. It came out in 1980, and lead actor was August Schellenberg, one of the better Canadian actors in our nation's history. The movie is quite interesting, but it's hard to find on VHS or DVD. But if you have a chance to see it, it's quite the case. Now, again, the main suspect again was Coffin. He was sent to trial in July '54, and though the evidence against him was mostly circumstantial, the convicted of one count of murder. Now, at the time, the Canadian Penal Code prohibited multiple convictions of murder in the same trial. Now, on August 5th of that year, he was sentenced to hang. Now, an eventual appeal to the Quebec Court of Queen's Bench was dismissed. Coffin's application for leave to appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada was turned down, and the federal cabinet submitted a reference question to that court asking if the application made by Wilbert Coffin for leave to appeal in the Supreme Court of Canada has been granted, or any of the grounds alleged in said application, what disposition of the appeal would now be made to the court. The federal government's decision to take the question to the Supreme Court of Canada caused tension with the government of the province of Quebec. The Supreme Court answered that it would have upheld the conviction of Coffin. Now, Coffin was hung at the Montreal Bordeaux prison again on February 10, 1956 at 12:01. Now, the book that Jacques Hébert had wrote led to a second one. The first one was saying Coffin is innocent, and the second one, I accuse the killers of Coffin. Now, the '63 book caused such controversy That again, that commission inquiring the case was headed by Judge Roger Bouchard, with Jules Deschamps as a counsel to the commission. Over 200 witnesses were interviewed, and again, the commission found that Coffin did receive a fair trial. Now, when that movie I talked about, the feature film L'Affaire Coffin, eventually released on September 10th, 1980, made by filmmaker Jean-Claude Labrec, other documents inspired by the case include Dale Boyle's song The Wilbur Coffin Story and the Alton Price book To Build a Noose, which reflects Price's intensive research on the case. Now, in 2006, 50 years after the Coffin hanging, 4 generations of the family commemorated his death at the graveside. That week, the Association in Defense of the Wrongly Convicted announced it was studying the case. Their director of client services for the association called Coffin's case a blot on the criminal justice system. The coroner at the time, Lionel Royu, told the media that he believes Coffin was innocent. He accused then Premier Maurice Duplessis of making Coffin into a scapegoat for the killings of foreign tourists. Rio held a coroner's inquest at which Coffin testified. He says that the provincial government destroyed the transcript of Coffin's testimony. Coffin, for some reason, did not testify at his trial. Now, speaking in 2006, prominent Canadian criminal lawyer Edward Greenspan blamed Coffin's trial lawyer, Raymond Marr, for keeping Coffin out of the witness box. It was incompetent with a capital I, Greenspan said of Marr. It's the worst case of lawyering I've ever seen. At the time Coffin was hanged, again, he had an 8-year-old son. Now, no information what happened to his son since then, and that's another mystery of the case. Now, in the 384-page book titled L'Affaire Coffin, Choux pour Charret, which means in English The Coffin Affair Hoax, published by Wilson and Lafleur in Montreal, Clément Fortin, a retired attorney and law professor, proceeded to reestablish the facts. Given the evidence presented to the Percy Gaspé Quebec jurors in 1954, Fortin concluded that they were justified to render a guilty verdict as charged. Again, the Royal Commission in 1964 on the Coffin Affair reached the same conclusion. Now, it comes down to 3 aspects here. Intent, evidence presented, and evidence. Sure, he had some parts of the victim's stuff, but what criminal intent was proven? Why did he not allow to speak at the courtroom? Like I said, there was no media back there besides print. There was no, if I'm not mistaken, CBC French in Quebec did not cover the trial or the reports. But what was kind of weird about this, Gaspé, Quebec was like the North Shore of New Brunswick at the time. There was very, very direct evidence would lead to a direct conviction. It was very ironic after the Coffin case led to the Joe Richard case of the North Shore, where basically the concern of the public sometimes was taking more than the evidence of the facts. But the Joe Richard case, he was a bad pup. Could he have done it? Yes. But the Coffin case, there was not enough evidence presented. But the problem is, he was the main suspect because usually when people have stuff from a deceased person and don't explain why he had it, he could have easily said, well, you know, I was going through there and I have a witness that I told the person I was going in to check for stuff and I found it. But he never told anybody he found the stuff. He knew the people were missing, or some people were trying to follow them, and he had money on them, and, you know, money is $600 back then is like $5,000 now. So if you have a chance, if the books are not out of print, try to find the books on the Coffin case. Try to find that Schellenberg movie, August Schellenberg. Always a tremendous actor, one of the most underrated actors in Canadian history. But the case of the Mohawk and confessing, why would one person come forward? I mean, if they were that guilty, you know, it just basically, before the charter and before proper forensics and evidence, Canada was a shitstorm when it came. You could literally, like I said in the previous podcast, you could murder somebody in January, go to trial in March, and be executed in July. It was that quick. There was quick justice. There was no appeals like now is different provincial and federal courts. There's no executions across Canada anymore. This is one of the thing. The Truscott case, this case, the murder of the lady that helped with the Quebec plane bombing. that the insurance scheme we talked in previous podcasts, the bad hangings, the Turpin case where, and the other person was executed, the head coming off. Truscott was only one of several saying, do we really in a modern society need to execute somebody right away where they can be in prison for the rest of their lives? But the 1950s, it was Canada was still a growing country, and the RCMP and the federal and provincial governments had more power than they have now, ladies and gentlemen. They were like, what goes. People would get years and years in jail for break and enter and robbery, and nowadays it's just a summary conviction, like fine or 6 months in jail with weekend serving. So the Coffin case, again, very interesting. For my American listeners, I'm doing this podcast also for a reason to let you guys know those in the States. Even though execution in Canada has been eliminated, these cases still resonate with us because justice denied is no justice. Justice served is justice. Did he do it? Well, it was 60% maybe. But what about the other 40%? How come there was no alibis coming forward? There was no people saying, well, I saw him in certain days. Or did he act suspicious? But, all these witnesses that were called in around, that's a lot of witnesses. So, anyway. I like to see the court transcripts over it because, something is missing here. Either someone didn't speak up, like Greenspan sent up a lawyer, or somebody didn't speak up enough. That's the way it goes. Thanks for listening. Bye.